Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Red Bench, or welcome back to the Red Bench if you're a regular viewer. I am Abby, if you don't know me already, the director here at the Vermont Ski and Snowboard Museum. This Red Bench series is complimentary, but we do request that you make a $10 donation if you are able. We are a nonprofit, and we rely on your generosity to keep pushing forward. We operate on a pretty small budget and often struggle to meet our fundraising goals. This series has the potential to really be a game changer for us. If every person that attended these virtual events last year just donated $10, we would have raised 30 grand. However, only 11% of the guests donated. And this is just an example of no donation is too small. With enough participation, the impact can be massive. So please help us make this series more successful than last year by making a donation tonight. Darn Tough is supporting our efforts to make this series sustainable by providing socks for us to raffle after each event. So everyone that donates at least $10 in support of this event is entered. The more you donate, the more entries you receive. Any donations made prior to tonight and before tomorrow morning are eligible for the raffle. Also helping support this series are our Red Bench series sponsors. I want to thank our silver sponsor, RK Miles, our bronze sponsors, AJ Ski and Sports and Sisler Builders, and our media sponsor, Vermont Ski and Ride. Without their support, this series certainly would not be possible. Okay, so nearly 40 years ago, the 1982 National Snow Surfing Championships were held at Suicide 6 in Woodstock, Vermont. This event became the longest running event in snowboarding history. Tonight, we'll revisit the past and talk about what's ahead, to be specific, the anniversary event in February. Moderating tonight's discussion is Paul Graves. Paul is the mastermind behind both events. He created the 82 event and is behind the wheel for the upcoming 40th anniversary. Paul started riding a snurfer in the mid-60s, became the first sponsored rider, and helped expose the sport to millions of first-time viewers. Tonight, Paul has gathered his friends and teammates from the 82 event. I will let him make those introductions, but we're all in for a real treat tonight. We will be answering audience questions at the end, so please type those into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and not the chat, and we'll get to as many of those as we can after the discussion. I want to thank you all for joining us tonight for another Red Bench event, and Paul, I will let you take it from here.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you so much. We want to welcome everyone. And of course, we want to thank the Vermont Ski and Snowboard Museum to invite us on the Red Bench Speaker Series. Tonight we are, as Abby just said, we're revisiting an event that kind of helped kickstart snowboarding in 1982. And I'm so excited with our panel. We still have one to show up, but I want to welcome and introduce. First off, we have Carroll. Chris is well known in the snowboarding community. He's had just a glorious career. He's still making waves today, and he was a member of the Snowboard East team, which is just a treat for me. Dave Allert, we're still waiting to show up. Dave was also a member of the 1982 Snowboard East team. We also have Jack Smith. Jack is a real rock star in three sports: sandboarding, skateboarding, and snowboarding. And Jack showed up in 1982 at the event as the head of the A-Team Snowboards. And the other handsome gentleman there is the general manager at the Suicide 6 Recreation Area, which is a ski area. In the summer, it's a killer mountain bike facility. And Tim is going to host us in February back at the original mountain from 40 years ago. So welcome everybody. How you doing tonight?
I'm good. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, very good. I think I need to sort of set the scene for our listeners. Again, we're talking about 1981, 1982. All through the late 60s and the 70s, myself and others became obsessed with a a new winter sport that was called snurfing at that time. And we've all been involved in its transition to snowboarding. I was lucky early on. Got a title in 1979 that led to a TV commercial with Labatt's beer, and then I went on to trying to open up mountains, and specifically I convinced my wife to move to Vermont when she was nicely settled in Connecticut, because I thought we were going to put snowboarding on the map. We settled in Woodstock, and she opened a jewelry shop, and I took a room in that shop and opened one of the first snowboard shops in the country called Snowboard East, and we started this journey. In 1981, I spoke with a friend who was the recreation director in Woodstock, a gentleman named Chuck Wielgus, and they were putting on the Woodstock Winter Carnival. And I approached the recreation department because I had this idea that maybe it was time to create an event and get some publicity for snowboarding. So we put a proposal together, sent it off, and amazingly, they agreed to do it, even though I don't think they really understood what we were going to do. And that started months of negotiation back and forth with Suicide Six and the Woodstock Inn and Resort, and getting support from people. Anyways, a miracle happened. No other mountain in the country was willing to take the risk except Suicide Six. And so they gave us an opportunity to put on a national championship, and the game was on. So that's my background there on where we are. And I want to open up with some group questions to our esteemed panel. And I'll tell you what, let's just, for easy sake, let's open with Jack, go to Chris, go to Tim. I'm always curious anytime that we speak to people, what was your first experience on a board and when? Chris, do you remember?
Yes, two experiences. I mean, the first attempt at a board, of course, was to take the skateboard trucks off the skateboard. That didn't work out very well. Ride it backwards, tore off all the stickers. No, my first actual experience on a wide board, when I say wide board, I'm distinguishing between a snurfer, because snurfer was something fun, but for me, the game changed when I got on a wide board that floated. That was the eye opener, the revelation. And for me, that was one of those Sims, those yellow bananas, those plastic boards.
Wow.
With being a skateboarder, it was natural gravity. I gravitated towards that. So I had a snurfer. My buddy got one of those Sims boards, and I took it from the school one day. He was still in class, and I'm like, "Oh, Charlie, I don't remember if I asked permission. I might have asked for forgiveness." But anyhow, I remember taking that board out, and on the golf course in Hanover, the actual spot where I rode it is covered with trees right now. To date myself a little bit, but I remember exactly where and when. Yeah, that first feeling of floating on snow was a game changer for me.
You still got that yellow Sims board?
No, you know, that board actually, I still have the snurfer, but I lent that board and the snurfer to a guy years ago who eventually, about 10 years ago, returned the snurfer, but somehow that yellow Sims board went missing. So no, unfortunately not.
How about you?
I still have that snurfer.
That's awesome. How about you, Jack?
First time my first experience riding a board on snow was in Alaska back in probably 1968, 69. I think it was a snurfer or something that looked like a snurfer, and did it a couple of days, and that was about it. And then didn't really have another opportunity until I think it was 78, 1970, 78. And I was somewhat sponsored by Flight for skateboarding, for slalom racing. And they sent me out one of their earth surfing vehicles, is what they called them. And, I lived a couple hundred miles from the snow. So Gary Flewitt and I decided this thing looks like it'll work on sand. So we started going sandboarding and that spring and summer. And then eventually when winter came around, we got up into the mountains up by Yosemite and, started sneaking onto places and trying to talk lift operators into letting us on. So that was how I got involved.
Awesome. Tim.
My snowboarding career is not nearly as illustrious as the rest of your panel, but I got my start riding at a really early age. A neighbor of mine had a really bad, department store sort of plastic board, and that made an appearance at our little sledding area one winter. I think I was 10 or 11, and we found that it went much better once you ripped the bindings off the thing. It had, kind of neoprene straps, if you will, that didn't really work for me. And I always had big feet as a kid, so I rode it more kind of toes forward. But yeah, that was a game changer. And then really seriously into snowboarding didn't come until a little bit later. I was introduced to the sport of skiing maybe a little bit later than a lot of the prodigies around me that I grew up with. But, I skied in Pennsylvania and raced a little bit in college. And when I moved to Vermont in the 90s to work at a mountain here at Killington, one of the guys I worked with said, man, you're doing it wrong. Those are 215s and they don't flex. You gotta get on a board. That's the all-terrain vehicle. That was it. It changed my life. And, I still enjoy skiing a bit, but the board's always the first choice.
Good. That's nice to hear. I didn't hear that a long time ago, I can guarantee you. I'm also curious from all of you, at that time when you were first getting into it, did you have any experience with how ski areas operated, chairlifts, getting on and off, or having even the opportunity to ride on groomed conditions? Now, Tim, I'm sure you did, just simply because of the difference in age, but Jack and Chris, I
skied a little bit as a kid in Alaska, but my first experience with actually getting on a lift with a snowboard was in 1979 at Boreal.
Oh.
And I remember it was 79 because we were staying in a cabin up there, and it was the year that Magic Johnson, Indiana, and Michigan State and Indiana State played in the championship of the NC2A, and we had to hike a mile through the snow to a bar to watch the game. So that's how I know it's 79. So we went to Boreal and we walked in, and we had our flight straight railer boards with us, and asked the guy, can we ride? And he said, why not? And we were the only two guys on snowboards there. And that was, I had no idea how to get on and off. So, I just held the board in my hand and, got on the lift that way.
Yeah.
And then jumped off. So that was my first experience actually being able to ride on a lift with a snowboard.
Yeah. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, it's interesting here. I was from the opposite end. I grew up steeped in alpine ski tradition. Like my dad had pictures of Stein Eriksen all around the house and stuff, but I was a skateboarder too, right? So, but growing up on the East Coast, so for me, it was a perfect marriage of the two sports. I'm like, I was familiar with skiing. I knew how to ski. I grew up skiing because we didn't have snowboards, but also understood skateboarding. So, I understood both worlds really well. But yes, I grew up, taking ski lessons and all that, and actually went back. I wouldn't say I've gone back to skiing, but I've tried skiing since the old 2x4 days. I used to ski on 213s and had a pair of 225 downhill skis and the whole bit, but that was my last pair of skis. Like shape skis were a whole new thing that within the last 20 years I've finally tried, and oh my God, they're pretty fun.
Yeah, it has.
Anytime you're sliding on snow, it's good. But so it's been interesting to me. But part of also, I think the whole connection between why snowboarding took off like it did was because of the infrastructure that skiing provided, not just for manufacturing boards themselves, but the resorts and everything else that we all enjoy these days. So that was really the the synergy that really, I think we all enjoyed the benefit of putting those two worlds together. This radical, like Jack's, experience of no idea about a ski area whatsoever, just have the skate mentality, go to the hill, which is great. I grew up knowing all the rules, unfortunately, for ski areas. So I was like, I felt like a cop at the ski area trying to tell all my skate buddies, like, yo, dude, you can't do that. Like, because we had to back then. It was like, otherwise we all got kicked off, right? So
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of naturally fell into that role, I'd say, because of that, maybe. But yes, definitely understood skiing.
I was so naive when my first experience was my father had gotten transferred. We were in Alabama and we moved up to New Jersey. And that was anyhow, I got invited by friends to go to the local town sledding hill. It wasn't a ski area, but it was where everybody in town would go to the one hill. And it was my first time and I was all excited. And I didn't have a sled or a toboggan or anything. So my friend said, well, just go in the garage and grab something. So I ran in his garage and I grabbed one huge wooden ski, and took it to the hill. And I spent all day putting both feet on that ski. I was the only one there doing such a stupid thing. But by the end of that first day, I was shooting down the hill and it was great and it was fun and other kids wanted to try it. And I've never, ever laid claim that that was anything other than a naive little boy shooting down a hill on one ski. But 2 years later in '66 is when the Snurfer came out. And
Just saying.
that was the game changer for me.
Yeah, it sounds like a water ski you might have grabbed, huh?
Well, it actually was a big old Norwegian cross-country ski.
Oh, wow.
But it just never occurred to me to take both of them. But anyways, Tim, did we skip you on that?
Oh, that's all right.
I think David's in the conversation now too. Are you here, David?
I've seen a message here. He's trying desperately to get on. I'm not sure what is holding him up, but let's hope he joins us.
But Tim, yes, tell us.
So, I grew up working at a ski area. It was one of those deals where you could volunteer in the summertime, even as a underage person. And if you offered to clear brush or do other assorted, surf tasks, you could earn a pass for a few hours of or a few weeks of work. So, that was our ticket to ride. But where I lived pretty rural and about an hour, maybe a little less from the nearest ski area. So a lot of our time was spent, on the back hill, in the woods, in the farm fields. I grew up in central Pennsylvania, in the mountains, thankfully. And, so we had really good terrain right in our backyards. And so that was always, the long builder. But it was a whole nother world once we got to the resort, and
Right.
The resort that I grew up, riding at, Blue Knob Resort, there was maybe one or two snowboarders on the mountain, and they didn't look really kindly on them at all. And I remember our first time really snowboarding at the resort, they did this all-night ski, and it was a buddy of mine figured out that we could park at this mid-level parking lot, and you could scoot out and get on at the mid station of the double chair that ran to the bottom. And there was one spot that was low enough that you wouldn't break your neck if you jumped off before you got to the top. And that was how we did it. And kind of undercover really got riding figured out, on decent terrain. Yeah.
I think we all spent a lot of time sneaking on ski areas. I know I sure did.
Yeah.
Well, listening to your story, Paul, about all the work that went into just getting the 82 event allowed at Suicide 6, I cannot help but be reminded of the time where I went up. You weren't there that particular day, I don't think, but I almost got the whole thing shut down.
Okay.
Yeah, because yeah, it was a horrible icy day, and the only trail they wanted, I had to go practice, of course, right? So I asked for a lift ticket, which I had to go to the mountain manager's office to get, of course, which he did back in those days. Convinced them to get a lift ticket, send me a lift ticket, and then they told me the only trail I could ride was Show Off, I think it was called, right underneath the chairlift. And it was just icy moles, and I'm riding a 1982 Burton backhill with twin fins, no high backs, impossible.
Flat on the bottom.
Yeah, I slid down that trail on my butt and went straight back to the mountain manager's office and demanded my money back, right? So, right, which I think they were happy to give me and send me on my way, and almost probably kick the whole event off. Thankfully, they didn't. But
That's I see one more face jumping on the screen here. David.
Hey man, I apologize. I'm kind of technically I'm challenged with that.
It's okay. You're with a group of technically challenged individuals. Not to worry.
We're kind of called dinosaurs, right? Anybody over 50?
Good
60?
to see you. Good to see you, David.
I appreciate you. I saw everybody else earlier. Just want to say hello. Continue on with your conversation, Paul. I won't interrupt. I'll be right here.
Well, I tell you what, I'm gonna slip you in here on our opening question, because we all would like to know, what was your first experience on a snowboard, and about how old were you?
Well, right in the background is a snurfer. It's not the original one from our family, but I've got a picture of my sister standing next to my younger sister of the family, the seventh of 7 siblings. She was about 4. We have a snurfer next to this giant snowman. And so I'm 4 years older than her. So I was about 8 years old. So about 1969 in Elkhart, Indiana. My parents gave my brother, or the boys, a snurfer and one of those metal flexible flyers, which are probably outlawed today. So about 1969, we were snurfing in about 69, and of course I had an older brother. They were skateboarding with the clay wheels, the steel wheels, and so forth.
Great. Well, we most of us have similar stories, which most of them seem to come out of the snurfer. But I have a question for all of you. Everybody probably had their own individual reason for coming to the 82 event, and I'm curious if you remember what that was. Jack, you want to start?
Yeah, mine was pretty straightforward. I'd started this little sandboard snowboard company called A-Team, and I thought, hey, I'll go out there and hang on a sec. Yeah, come do it. Hang on, I'll be right back.
Talk about challenged.
Okay, that was my IT person. I thought I'd go out there and kick some butt in the race, and in turn sell a bunch of snowboards. That didn't happen. So my reason was to go out and have some fun, promote the boards, get a ride a lift up a mountain. So that's why I went.
Yeah. Chris?
Yeah, well, for me, Paul, I just remember coming home from a school break and seeing an article in the Valley News about you in this event. I couldn't believe this was actually happening here, just within traveling distance from where I grew up in New England. So I wouldn't have missed it for the world. But for me, the biggest draw was Jack Smith, Tom Sims. Like you guys, for me, were like, oh my God, are you kidding me? You guys are coming to Vermont? Like, there's no way in the world I ever would have missed that. And plus I saw, for me, being 18, 19 years old. How old was I? 82. I can't count that high. I was a skateboarder, and I just saw a future in snowboarding there. It was just understanding skiing and that world, and understanding skateboarding. It was just obvious. And I think for me, that's sort of the vibe that we all, as snowboarders collectively, when we all saw each other back in the day, that's why we all high-fived each other, because I think we all knew that. It's just such a good stoke. And But yeah, I wouldn't have missed that for the world because of the people that you brought together, Paul, honestly. You know, how you came to see that opportunity and why you brought it to Vermont or how, or I don't know how that all happened, but I'm really grateful that you did.
Well,
So,
thank you. It was a mission. I mean, back, and then we're going to get into basically how I tricked my friends at Suicide Six into allowing this to happen.
Good
But
job.
is David, are you still with us?
No?
Okay, I just was curious. Tim, I know that you did not come to the original event, and we're not going to hold that against you, but.
I'm
And then-
really curious. Actually, Chris mentioned that he read an article in the Valley News, and I just wonder how you promoted the original event. Like, how did Jack and David hear about it? Was it like in an industry rag, or was that like, you know, calling people on the phone because they had a shop? I'm really curious.
Okay, yeah, we'll jump ahead to that. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
What
Good question.
what had happened was I had been cranking for probably 20 years, all 17 years, coming up to the 81, 82 timeframe. And as I said earlier, I moved to Vermont for the sole purpose. I knew how exciting the sport was. I was making a meager living at it. I was getting royalty payments from the TV commercial. And honestly, I was driving around and selected Woodstock, and Suicide Six rose, you know, there were ski mountains down every road. You could go down one road, get to Akimo. You could go 4 north, get to Killington and Pico. Suicide Six, it was all over the place. But between the flavor at Suicide Six, once we moved to Woodstock, I became very aware really of your history, Tim. Suicide Six is amazing history, and I'm going to give you a chance to talk about that later. But basically, somebody said, what'd you do? Call people? I literally was typing letters, making long distance phone calls. I have copies of a letter to Tom Sims where I ripped him a new one because he wasn't going to come east. And I was so angry, and I wrote him this nasty letter, and he showed up. And Jake and I, at that time, you know, I had met Jake out in Michigan in '79. And just because we were close in proximity to each other, you know, getting involved with him, and it just was a dogfight. There was no reason why it should have happened, but it did. And I said earlier that I feel like we snuck in the back door once I learned of this winter carnival and buddied up to the rec director, and we literally just kind of came in the back door. And then once the event took place, that's when things started to change. But you know, you love what you do, and if you believe in it, you just keep chasing it.
Still at it.
Yeah, man. But I'm you know, it's funny. I'll tell you what, geez, I'm so sorry we lost Dave. I hope.
Here, hang on.
Oh,
Oh,
he's
you're
back.
there?
There he is.
Okay.
You know what? I was in my basement, the man cave, and it seemed like the Wi-Fi was kept disconnecting, not unless you guys were being also getting
Coming and
lost.
going.
Were you having trouble with yours also or not?
No.
No, I'm staying on pretty good here.
Yeah.
Okay, because now I moved upstairs now. I'm gonna stay away from the basement. I wanted to show off my little collection, but too bad for that.
Oh, I gotta look at those old snurfers. I saw those.
Yeah, well, I got the old Burton bib. You know, I don't want to just jump in on you guys, but I missed a little bit of what Paul said because of disconnection when I was in the basement.
Well, I was just blabbing about my story, and that's not why we're here tonight. But
No, we're here for everybody's story.
So did you write Jack and David nice letters, or how did they get one?
well,
My story is a little bit different, I think. Almost entirely different.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, David, I'm going to start with you. I'm going to switch this now to some more like individual stories here, but let me just fill the people in on a little bit of your background. David was an early competitor. He was competing in snurfer events in the late 70s. There were a couple of other events that took place. So David found himself very early on competing with Jack Smith and Tom Sims and Jake Burton. He's from Indiana. He's still from there. He introduced me to reggae music in 1981. And basically, David, I just remember being contacted that he wanted to move to Woodstock and be a member of the Snowboard East team. And Tim, you'll get a kick out of this. He ended up getting a job at the Woodstock Inn as a doorman. So David was the first person all of the guests would see because he greeted them at the front door. But David, you tell us, why did you move to Woodstock?
Okay, we're going to try to make this short and snappy, but long stories are going to be a long story, but here we go. A former family friend was living there in Woodstock. He and his brother, the Line Box, one had called the Green Mountain Emporium downtown, right near the Bentley's bar. It was down below, downstairs, selling coffee and all that good stuff and imported goodies. And Doug, the other brother, worked at the inn. Now, these guys inherited a bundle of money from their mother, and they moved off to Vermont. They were hippie friends of my brother's. And so my brother and I made contact with Doug because we were in search of powder, search of snow, to go snowboarding. So we went there for a Christmas vacation, a little treat. My older brother and I, Bill, in 81 of, it was 80, going into 80 of Christmas. We went there. That's when we went to, Doug told us about Mount Tom. We went to Mount Tom. We heard about Paul. We went upstairs to the jewelry shop. We met Paul. And then from that time, it was like in my mind, I wanted to go, snowboarding at a ski resort. That's when Paul put together this idea, let's go approach Suicide 6. We went there and we had a couple of runs. They did, at least. Is that right, Paul?
Yeah.
Okay. Paul made his case. He said, let's do this. And I thought I blew it because my brother took off on top of the mountain. He went down one trail and I was going to follow him. But in my pursuit, I fell and I dislocated my collarbone. They took me down the hill, down the mountain in one of those medic sleds. And I thought, I just screwed all this up for Paul and for snowboarders because they didn't like snowboarders anywhere. We even had our leashes. We were trying to do everything. We'll sign a waiver. It didn't matter. But that didn't really throw too much shade on things. It didn't cast a big shadow over it because Paul was able to talk to them and let them know this is just one of those things. It happens to skiers all the time. People get injured. I slipped on that hard packed snow, went home on Christmas Day. I was supposed to be there in Vermont snowboarding, and we went home early. Now, Doug works at the inn. I'm already working at a hotel in Elkhart, and I want to pursue my hospitality, work employment. And so I applied through the mail, Woodstock Inn. I got the job, told Paul, hey, I'm coming to Vermont. And he must have opened the doors and said, here's a spot on the Snowboard East team. I'm not quite sure how he said it's okay, but I tell you what, when I competed against Burton and Boughton over at Pando Ski Resort 2 years in a row, my buddies and I, we came in third, fourth, and fifth the second year. Now, granted, Jake and Doug Boughton did their thing. I give them all that respect. Everybody had their part, as well as Paul, myself, and my friends. My friends were making their own boards back then.
Yeah.
We were riding the Sims boards. And then I went, met up with Paul. That was 81 October, and the rest is history.
Yeah. There was,
Yeah, I worked there at the end. I worked at the end making $5 an hour in tips. And they put us up in their room, you know, they had their own houses they owned.
Yeah.
Woodstock was very kind to me. Woodstock was a big part of my life. In fact, even that's where when I was living in Woodstock and making trips to Burlington, I visited record shops and I got a taste of some good reggae, and that also helped inspire me. So Vermont has a place not only with snowboarding, but with reggae with myself. And there's a whole different chapter right there.
yeah. That's how I remember it, my friend. Absolutely. What, before we jump around with these individuals, what was your first impression of Suicide Six in the face?
Oh man, that was, you know, yeah, that was a little bit more than we could handle. I think I probably took a couple of shots of that Vermont whiskey or something, because I mean, you tell me, that was quite the, you know, but back then, you know, you're 20 years old, you're full of vigor. We're ready for it. And, you know, you may fly through the air 20, 30 feet and not realize it. You're flying down that mountain and hit some bumps. It was that contest, leading up to the contest, Paul and I, we got stories. We were there with Jake checking out the trails. The backside of that mountain was all that crushed corn snow. So we were riding that while they were grooming the face the day before the event. And that very table, let me just put it like this. I ate a whole lot of good meals that Mrs. Graves, that Denise, she's a sweet lady. She prepared a lot of meals, and Paul and Denise looked after me like a son. And I appreciate that, like an aunt and uncle. I ate on that table that they flipped over and we used as a starting gate. So I know that table very well.
Yeah, that's one of the best stories of the event for those that don't know. I'll just jump in with this sidebar story.
Sorry to take that thunder from you.
No, it's fine, David. But literally the morning of the event, I showed up right after sunrise to check the mountain and make sure everything was all set. And the first thing I noticed was at the starting area, there was nothing there. There was no starting area, and I panicked. And I lived close enough to where I jumped in my 1965 Chevy pickup with two-wheel drive, hauled my butt home, and literally told my wife, stand up. I think she was having a cup of coffee at the table. And I said, stand up, honey, I need the table. I threw it in the back of the truck. I took it to Suicide Six, threw it on a snowcat. We drove it up to the starting gate and we covered it with snow. And every competitor that day launched themselves onto the race course, holding onto the legs of my kitchen table that was upside down. So that's what Dave's referring to there.
Yeah, that was like Art Deco stainless steel with a nice wraparound edge. You know, that was a very sturdy table.
That's kind of how I remember it. Two bits of chrome.
That's right.
Yes.
You remember that, Chris?
Oh yeah. I don't think I pulled on that thing very hard though. Just enough to get out of that gate and let the hell do the rest of it.
Mhm.
Oh man, for sure. Let me jump to Jack Smith here. Jack, same thing with you. The mountain, the face.
Well, I remember when you took me over there and you showed it to me, it scared the crap out of me.
Yeah.
You know, I'd never raced, you know, or ridden down something that steep. And yeah, you know, I was riding one of my boards, and you know, I'd made these funky metal edges. I went to the hardware store and got quarter-inch angle aluminum, cut it into small pieces so it would fit on the side cut of the board, you know, and I knew right then I was way out of my league.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It's I think Dave referenced being up on the hill before the contest with Jake, and Jake said to me a number of times, we can't do this. It can't be done. We were all scared to death. And it was a case of, I remember looking at him and just saying, we don't have a choice, Jake. It's now or never. But Tim, you jump in here before I give Chris a shot here. Tell people about the face at Suicide 6.
You know, it's we were just having a discussion with some community members last night, and they all talked about how, you know, Suicide 6 is a small mountain that really punches above its weight class as far as steepness and
Great way to say it.
And you know, I think a really cool example of that is, you know, Paul got to experience, we had some pro riders here last spring, you know, and Paul sharing the stories of the face, and you know, it was Seb Powell and Miles Fallon and Maggie Leon, like really incredibly talented, young, powerful riders. And, you know, I think they all kind of maybe scoffed a little bit, you know, about the steepness of the face, you know, as you see it, but they clearly knew, you know, the difference in equipment. And the three of them went up and made some runs and came back down. And I saw how big Zeb's eyes were when he ran into Paul at the bottom, and he was like, you know, holy crap, like that's serious business, you know? And I mean, I think it's great that it still has that effect on people. And, you know, we're, you know, this place, grateful to be, you know, in the cradle of snowboarding, but, you know, long alpine ski racing history here too. And, you know, it's really well known and well liked by a lot of, you know, really talented racers as being a really serious course. So, you know, it's certainly a crown jewel for us. And between show off and the face, it's a pretty awesome storefront to have. Even when you pull in the parking lot, you know it's going to be good when you see it.
I believe going way back when I first was hitting up 6 about this, wasn't the face used as a training slope, I believe, for Olympians? Wasn't it back in the 40s or?
Yeah, so we have the longest running alpine ski race in the country. It started in 1937. It's called the Fisk Trophy Race. And yeah, I mean, a lot of Olympians and Olympic hopefuls and really strong club racers throughout history have come here and raced and trained on that slope. And even still, we actually have a lot of the, you know, the larger program schools, you know, the alpine racing schools will, you know, come and rent time just to practice on that slalom run. So the fact that you guys were, you know, hucking yourself down it on the equipment that you were is respectable at the least.
Yeah, it was, you know, to a degree, the Snowboard Ace team, probably because we trained there leading up to the 82 event. And David, of course, would remember it was myself, David, and Peter Ross, who was supposed to join us tonight. And at the last minute, it just became impossible. I'm so sad that Peter wasn't here, but Dave, I'm sure you remember doing the shoot for the Today Show, which was, you know, it was such a big deal at the time, but we did run after run that day down the face. We just did, it feel like we did 40 runs that day, and every one of them, it still strikes fear in my heart.
I'm still looking for that videotape. I think Brian Gumble has it. God bless Willard Scott. I believe the quote that was on the Today Show with Willard Scott and Brian Gumble, I think they were the combination back then.
Right.
Was Willard said, well, if an elephant can ski.
Yeah.
And he just left it at that. If an elephant can ski, I guess he's referring to himself maybe, then perhaps he could snowboard, because there was a couple nice shots there. I think there was somebody getting some good air. It was a time that I'll cherish. You know, tonight I got my 15 minutes, and my 15 minutes of fame. I'll run with it. You know,
Yeah,
I owe a lot to Paul, and I for some reason I don't have Chris up on my screen. I only have 4 people on my screen, but Chris Carroll, I just got to big him up. Chris Carroll, Shredder Electric, the Soul Monkey Surf. You know, Chris was ahead of his time. He was wearing a helmet back then. You know, he was a
Good point.
skateboarder. I also was a skateboarder, but I didn't have enough sense to wear a helmet. Perhaps I just didn't have my skateboard gear with me in Vermont, you know, during the winter.
Helmets were just almost non-existent. Chris Carroll, wasn't your mother, did she force you to wear a helmet? I seem to remember that.
Well, yeah, it was one of these deals. Like my first time I looked at that hill, it was guaranteed that this is going to hurt. But okay, you know, it's like, here we go, you know. So, but yeah, being a skateboarder in Vermont, we didn't have a whole lot of options for skateboarding. So downhilling was what I did the most of. You know, stand up 50 miles an hour on a skateboard, and didn't always use a helmet. But yeah, Mom, after seeing me do that a few times, decided that I should probably get a helmet. So yeah, I think the helmet that I was pictured wearing in that Vermont Life article, it says Sonic Wave, because it was an old rental helmet that we bought from some skate park down in Massachusetts.
Paul, here's something that kind of sums up my experience at Suicide 6 on the face. This is an article that was in, I think, the Woodstock newspaper, and I don't know if you guys can read it.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
And that was very true.
Yeah, it's a little bit harder. Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
that was ice. That was that stuff hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the snowmaking and grooming certainly wasn't, you know, up to today's standards. So I'm sure
No.
conditions probably are really variable. And
Yeah, I mean, it was a classic East Coast.
As grateful as I'll always be to Suicide 6, I'm sure this will mean something to Tim and the local Woodstock community, but there was the head ski patrol guy was named Win Lincoln, and he is a revered man in the Woodstock area who, if you skied, you went through Win Lincoln, and he absolutely tortured me during the whole process. He made sure that certain standards were going to be met or it wasn't going to happen. And so you talk about people that, you know, you think about as you get older. I'll always be grateful to Win Lincoln for making us up our game there that day, that weekend. Boy, I cannot believe how quickly time is going by before we get to the Q&A session. So I'm going to pick up my pace here and I'm going to start really jumping around. I want to go back to Jack Smith for a minute. First of all, Jack, early this morning, I think I woke up to a tribute that you gave to your father on Veterans Day. So I would like to acknowledge that it's Veterans Day today and thank your father and, of course, all the veterans out there. But you have a couple of really cool stories, and I'm going to go ahead and put them out there, and I'd like you to comment them. Tell us about your plane ride with Tom Sims getting to the event, and then I have a follow-up question.
Okay. Well, Tom and I, we both flew out of LA and on different flights, but we ended up, I'm not sure if it was Boston or New York, where we ended up together again for a late night flight to Rutland.
Yeah.
Is it Vermont? Is Rutland in Vermont?
Yep, Rutland,
Yeah,
Vermont.
And I remember they called the flight and we're looking out the window and we see this, what we learned later was a de Havilland otter, you know, wing on top. It's snowing like mad. You know, we get on the plane, we're sitting next to each other and we both thought we were going to die. You know, we didn't think we were ever going to make it to the event because it was just we're bouncing all around. You know, we weren't used to stuff like that. And we were very happy when we landed at Rutland.
Which is basically an air strip. It's
Yeah.
not an airport.
You were the only guy there to pick us up.
Yeah, well, to land. But anyhow, you made it.
Yep.
Yeah. And then, do you remember the dinner? What I refer to as the dinner. Let me just set it up quickly. The night before the event.
Actually, it was 2 nights before the event.
2 nights, okay. We surprisingly generated an incredible amount of media interest. And besides the Today Show and newspapers, Vermont Life magazine, we were able to have Sports Illustrated, which was a powerhouse back then. It was the go-to sports issue. They actually sent a reporter up by the name of Alex Wolf. And so there's actually 2 stories that I'm going to let Jack share. One is the dinner, and the other would be how you and Alex palled up.
Okay. Well, that night at the dinner, I think it was you and Denise, Tom and myself. I think Jake was there, and of course, Alexander Wolf. And, you know, during the dinner, everybody's, you know, talking, sharing stories back and forth, getting to know each other a little bit. And then as the evening wore on, I found myself kind of paired up with Alex, and, you know, we're talking about different things. And I discovered that he's the, you know, this young writer that covers the NBA for Sports Illustrated. And I grew up playing basketball, ended up coaching basketball. And so we found out we both shared this love of basketball. So as the evening's ending, he says, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And I said, "Well, I'm supposed to practice for the contest." And he says, "Well, you know that Dartmouth University is not too far from here, and, you know, it's open gym all day. You know, we could go play pickup ball all day." And I said, "All right, pick me up." He picked me up from your house the next morning, and we drove up to Dartmouth and had a great day of playing basketball. Alex was really good. He had actually played some semi-pro ball in Europe. So we had this great day of playing hoops. And, you know, looking back now, it kind of gave me an excuse as to why I did so poorly in the contest. Instead of practicing, I was playing basketball all day. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
That's my man, Jack. Chris,
Here.
tell us about Soul Monkey. I'm saying that right, aren't I?
Soul Monkey Surf. Yeah, well, that's my latest snowboard endeavor, the snow skate deal. But, you know, that was just a passion project, really, that I've been coaching snowboarding for years and running a race team in Park City at the time. But coaching kids who are, you know, doing alpine snowboarding, which has become a niche of the sport most people aren't even aware of these days, but with customized, you know, hard shell plastic, you know, like hard shell snowboard boots, but snowboard boots nonetheless, and on race boards, which are typically 170 centimeters, up to 180-ish, long, you know, for running case. Anyhow, awesome sport. But for me, it just, what was missing in the sport was more of just the, you know, the go out in the back hill like we used to do, we find a place to go ride, the simplicity of it. So that's what Soul Monkey was really all about, was an attempt that myself and Jimmy Sechrist, the guy who actually made the boards, we're both from the same era. Jimmy was more on he competed, but he was more on the, well, he was a tool maker by trade at the time. At a young age, and then learned how to manufacture snowboards, which involved a lot of adapting of ski manufacturing equipment mostly.
Yeah.
So Jimmy was, you know, throughout the years of snowboarding evolution on the back side of the sport with manufacturing, from materials to presses, manufacturing processes, all these things. You know, a lot of boards throughout the years were designed by Jimmy, like that Look Lamar is a famous one. That was one of his designs. And Jimmy worked for Look. Anyhow, for us, it was about doing 3D bases. In other words, no flat bases, because Jimmy for sure has made every type of flat baseboard in the world. I've certainly ridden all different types of designs throughout my time. But we both felt that, snowboards are awesome, but that there were some limitations that were created by manufacturing. And that if you look at the early boards, they all had 3D bases, the early Sims boards, the early Barfoots, the early A-teams. Jack, I think you can probably relate to this. Yeah, it came from more of a hydrodynamic surf influence. And snowboards are awesome, but they're flat for a couple of reasons. One, it works, but two, because that's how skis are made. And
Right.
how the equipment is adapted to make snowboards. So our mission was to not acknowledge that constraint, right? There's a reason people don't do it, because it's complicated and expensive. Make 3D bases like this thing, for example. This is the snow skate, it's hard to make material bend and cool and not turn into a potato chip and warp and stuff when you build these things.
Yeah.
So that's just the snow skate, but we've done molds for snowboards. We've got a 191 that actually is designed to be ridden with bindings, but that's all 3D based hydrodynamic concepts in there. And then power surfers, which are snowboards without bindings now that can be ridden, because that 3D base gives you a little pushback, which is nice. It allows you to feel what's going on underneath your feet. Whereas a flat base board, not so much. You've got to have a little more snow and speed to make that work. And then anyhow, so that was really it for us. It was a way for us to continue experimenting.
Yeah.
So we'll see where that goes. It's tricky business model, I can tell you that. But again, for us, that was really more just about pursuing our passion and where could this sport go without that constraint.
Yeah.
And I think nowadays with manufacturing being 3D printing and all the processes that have come along over the decades, there are more options, and it's great to see. There's a whole new shaper movement going on in pow surfing right now, with people hand shaping boards out of wood to foam, surfboard style, snow crabs.
Yeah, surfboard style, exactly.
It's
Well,
pretty cool.
Chris, I didn't really cover your background like I wanted to, so I'm gonna quickly make some statements here about your role in snowboarding. I don't know if you remember, but my first memory of you was I just happened to be in Hanover, New Hampshire for I don't know why. And I saw you skateboarding illegally, I might add, on the sidewalk. And you were ripping it up, man. And I remember stopping you, introducing myself. We talked about the Snowboard East team, and that's my first memory of you. But you went on. I have the actual, these are the results from the 82 event here. Wow. And Chris, you placed second in the slalom. I think you placed high in the downhill. But the point being, that was one of your early titles. I believe 1 year later, Chris became one of the first world champions in snowboarding. He rode for Burton for years. Chris started the New England Cup here in New England. He was involved in snowboard camps, commercial camps, and he's still in the industry today. I just want to say, brother, I'm just so pleased to have been a part of what you've done. It's incredible, and you're still making it happen. And I want to, let me shift here to David quickly. Again, my friend, you were like a son to me. We loved having you around back then. Again,
you're the uncle. You're the uncle I always wanted, man. I never had the cool uncle. Paul, my wife and I, we've been blessed. We've been together 36 years, almost, as long as I've been doing my thing. The reggae thing is 38 years, snowboarding. I want to go back to Chris though. This, I don't have a Soul Monkey surf. I need to get one. I should break down and spend some bucks, because what he's doing is like organic. It takes me back to the days of skateboarding. simple, just getting in touch, because you jump on that board, I can see how you could jump on his board and just ride like just down a slope, just down a backyard, down a country hill, whatever, and you can really get into the groove, because it doesn't need to be complicated. And back then, when we were first starting out, when we got that Sims board and I had my skateboard, I used to ride in contests and, you know, in competitions and the Kryptonics. I was out there when Jay Adams and Alba and them were at Marina Del Rey. They intimidated me. I mean, you know, I was in California, but I couldn't compete with that. But the fact is that the skateboarding, it transcends right into that snow surfing, or if you were a surfer, and I wasn't a surfer, I'm a flatlander, and that's another thing. Going to Vermont as a guy with a twang from Indiana, you know, Elkhart, Indiana, or this right on the border of Michigan. But I tell you, we had the dunes. The Michigan dunes are incredible. You could also ride those boards on the sand, but we found some amazing terrain. The skating, the skateboarding, like I said, right there what Chris is doing, I really appreciate and applaud that. He's ahead of the game. He's always been ahead of the game. The fact that he was on our Snowboard East team, our Paul's team, and Coach Paul, I applaud that. Profile ski wear, the Dunham boots. We had, you know, we were big ballers back then, and people don't realize maybe that, you know, don't take the thunder away. Don't hate the player, right? The guy that Paul, the OG, the old guy, I hand it to you, man. This has just
Paul,
been an incredible journey.
props to that too.
You know?
Thank you.
And the other guys that were on the team, the Peabodys or whoever else was there. I mean, I know Jake had a hell of a crew, and when Chris went on to do his thing with that, I followed it. I just happened to fall in love with two things: reggae and a woman. I've been with them both, and then kind of, you know how it goes.
Nothing wrong.
I kind of kicked snowboarding to the curb, and I should have done that.
No,
Well,
that sounds like a good choice.
Thank you for those comments. Jack, are you still with us?
I'm here.
Okay, I want to, the time is going by so quick. I just want people to know that some of Jack's projects, he's one of the few people that on 2 occasions skateboarded across America. Now, we don't have time to go into that, but it's an incredible story. I'm sure if you Google it, there's information out there, but just an amazing career. And I want to give him a shout out because this past year, Jack was kind of fulfilled a lifelong dream, and it's another great story. We have to do another show, but he wrote a script for a movie, and you talk about a tough project, getting a movie made. He got it done this year. The movie is called New Providence, and it's available, I think, Jack, on Amazon. Am I right? Or
Amazon Prime, yeah.
Yeah. Just incredible. And the reason I'm rushing here is because I got one more thing to cover before we go to our Q&A session, where again, whatever questions come in directed at you, we'll ask you to answer. But let me just take a couple of minutes here. Tim, I'm bringing you back into the conversation here. Over the last year, it was a fun movement started that has led to the creation of the OG Invitational, which we're doing at Suicide 6, February 12th, 2022. And it's going to be a celebration of the 1982 event and all of our accomplishments there. And we, Tim, I know you're as excited as I am. We have managed to get Red Bull as our title sponsor. And of course, Suicide 6, the Woodstock Inn, the Vermont Ski and Snowboard Museum, Never Summer Snowboards has joined up with us. And here in Vermont, Darkside Snowboards, which is a retail outlet, and they sponsor a team. They joined up with us this week. Point being, momentum is really, really building. And Tim, just what are your feelings and thoughts on what we're going to do?
Well, we're just so grateful not only to be a part of the history, but to come back and revisit and celebrate that and continue, with the evolution of not only the event, but the sport and where it is. So I think it's really great, like what Chris is doing with the PAL surfers. And I think, snowboarding, the bindingless stuff, and kind of going back to its roots is really exciting. So,
we're going to welcome those riders, aren't we?
Absolutely. To have some, of that activity here, and with a new surface lift here and a little progression area, we're going to build a little park and have some fun things for people to mess around on with snow skates and without bindings, but then to send riders back up the face and show off what the original course was like. And, to have Red Bull here with the excitement that'll bring, and a rail jam at night. I mean, I think our team, and we're a small team, we're a small resort with a big heart, but our team is just over the moon excited about this, because we've got a really great group of hardcore riders here who, grew up with you guys as heroes and have followed the evolution of the sport. So we're beyond stoked.
Well, as you mentioned, we're excited. Red Bull's bringing the party. We're going to have a retro slopeside event. Then we're going to relive the face with the downhill upside down kitchen table challenge. Then Tim said, we're going to end the day with a rail jam under the lights and an après snowboard party. It's going to be wild. So for anybody that's interested, we certainly are hoping to draw a crowd. And I just want to throw out the website where it's changing weekly in real time, but the website is the OGinvitational.com, all one running word, the OGinvitational.com. So check out the website, and we are, again, just so excited. It's hard to believe that 40 years has gone by. I'm the only one that's aged when I look at these guys. So again, we're not running over, but I feel an obligation to go to our Q&A, which I'm going to try to do right now and see what we got here. All right. The first question is from my granddaughter. So she's watching. You should be in bed, girl. This is a question for Pop Pop. What was the biggest decision you made in your snowboarding life? Oh my goodness. It probably, honey, was just making that decision to move to Vermont and take on the challenge, and it all worked out for us. And I'm so excited she's 8 years old, and we're gonna start snurfing this winter. So, and let me just quickly throw a shout out to her mom, my oldest daughter. Happy anniversary today, sweetie. All right, Gordon Cole, who won the event in slalom and downhill? Again, I've got the official results right here. In the downhill, Tom Sims took first, Bob Novak took second from the Michigan area, and Doug Boughton came in third. And in the slalom, Doug Boughton took first, our Chris Carroll took second, and Louis Fournier came in third. And the overall winner of the event was Doug Boughton, who was really an amazing rider at the time. So I hope that answers that question. Let's see. Is Warren Miller Entertainment going to be doing some filming at the event? Well, they haven't called me yet, but I'm happy to say that my buddy Tim there recently connected us with another OG in snowboarding, Gary Land, who was got his start as a photographer. He's now a really respected filmmaker, and Gary is bringing a production crew up to record the event for us.
Oh, wow. Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm so excited, Tim. It's been an amazing 2 weeks with Gary so far.
Oh, fantastic. That's such good news. Glad to hear it.
Yeah. Hey, our friend Laurie Asper is here, guys. She goes, no bikini contest. I think we all know what that means, right? Chris?
What, Laurie's gonna start one?
If anybody's going to start one, Laurie will, right?
Okay.
Well, how did Suicide 6 get its name? Tim?
Suicide 6, so the legend goes, in 1934, the first ski lift in the United States was on the backside here on Clinton Gilbert's farm. And Bunny Bertram, Wallace Bertram, a local, set up that rope tow and helped run it. And he and some friends from Dartmouth were looking at topographical maps and trying to figure out how they could go faster and higher. And they came up to the top of this knoll here, which was hill number 6 on the topo map. And the story said, one of his friends said, oh, to go down the front of that would be suicide. And that's the face you guys raced on in '82. So that's where it got its name, and maybe rightly so.
Yeah, I think we refer to Suicide 6 because of the face.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, here's a question, and I'm going to throw it out to any of you guys. What was the course like? How fast were people going?
Well, I can't answer that because I didn't make it very far down the course. Chris would be the guy to ask.
I remember, Paul, somewhere along, I think you must have timed it with your stopwatch there. 2 of them, I think.
3 of them.
But I remember, Todd, the speeds we figured were 63 miles an hour.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
about 9 seconds. So that's faster than most cars. I mean, back then anyway.
And rumor has it there was a backstop at the bottom. Can you tell me about that?
Backstop was the hay bales.
Hay bales.
Backstop was hay bales. And guys were bailing out before the hay bales. Hopefully.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get road rash from that hard pack.
My first attempt at stopping, I went heel side, dug my heel fin in, which worked really well. It flipped me right over onto my face quickly, full fly swatter. But I managed to stop before hitting the bales, so I was pretty happy about that.
Yeah, it was so fast. And you're right, there were hay bales, but we also set up 2 layers of fencing, and between those 2, that's how most people were stopping, hitting those walls at 50 miles plus an hour. It was wild.
Really wasn't a really effective way at stopping. I don't know if anybody really managed to stop without crashing at that race.
Yeah. Here's another question from Kevin Queenan, and he's asking you guys, what are you all riding nowadays for equipment? And he also would like Chris to show the board behind him and give some details. So first, are you guys still riding, and what are you riding?
I'm not riding on snow. I'm still riding something when I go sandboarding that looks very similar to this 40-some-year-old A-team sandboard.
Yeah. David, you still get out?
Occasionally, and I'll tell you, down in the basement, I got this aftermarket snowboard I must have bought 10 or 15 years ago at a discount grocery store / retail store for about $70 or $80. I mean, it is P-Tex. When I bailed out of snowboarding, basically, I got a Burton Performer down there. It was a wood board. And that's when I went to Wolf Creek. When I left Vermont, I ended up going to Colorado. I was the guy on a roll, like the Rolling Stone. I just kept going and trying to find my place. And I was in Salida, Colorado, and I called numerous ski resorts. Anyhow, I'm not riding really. I go to a local hill with this aftermarket board. It's just really, it's kind of funky. But I go out there and I find these inner city kids that are sledding and they've never seen a snowboard. I've got extra gloves, extra hats, and I like to teach them. You know, I live in a community that's more black and brown, and they enjoy it. And maybe I'm gonna go out and purchase a Soul Monkey Surfer, buy another decent board with bindings. I don't really like the binding thing. Sometimes it seems too restrictive for the young starter, you know, somebody starting out.
Well, you're paying it forward, David, and that's what matters. That's awesome, man. You keep doing that. Tim?
Yeah.
I can't tell you how excited I was to go back to Suicide 6 and find out that a snowboarder was running the mountain.
Hey,
I didn't go too deep into those early years, but I guarantee you your predecessors made me jump through some hoops. But so what do you ride?
I've got a LibTech skunk ape that I really like. I've got a size 13, 14 foot. So like Chris was talking about earlier, man, wide boards really changed it for me, you know, being able to open up my stance. And I've got an Arbor that I really like. Although I'm really curious about this 191 you're talking about there, Chris, because I like a long board. So, you know, and I'm a big guy. So I feel like, you know, that's the kind of turn I like to make. I like a big surfy turn, and I enjoy plowing trees, and you know, anything that's going to kind of give me that satisfaction is exactly what I'm looking for.
Yeah. That's sweet. Well, we have we have a couple of questions here that are asking about the OG.
what about you, Paul? Hang on. What about you? What do you ride? Are you riding?
I don't ride much at all anymore. My legs are, I've had 5 or 6 surgical procedures throughout the years, and I'm at a point now to where I just need to have both knees replaced. And to be honest, I'm willing to do it to play with my grandkids, but I'm not willing to do it to, you know, to ride big mountains anymore. I kind of feel lucky to have gotten through 56 or so years and still be upright. But
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
But I still will, you know, play on a snurfer, and it's not like the old days for sure.
That's for sure, yeah.
Before we go on, could we get Chris to show those boards he has there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually a modern, it's an old shape, but it's just a swallowtail snowboard from Japanese company Moss. But that is actually what I've been riding recently, just because it's a different shape, something different than the typical popsicle stick. But really, this is the Soul Monkey snow skate, which is no bindings, and a 3D base, which is designed so that you can just step on this thing and lean it, tip it, and turn in the snow. So this was
Chris,
really,
does that have an edge?
not a steel edge, but it actually does have a rather sharp compound. This curves down towards the edge here. Because
Oh, cool.
that curve, it gives it a little bit more pressure. But there technically no steel edge. If we were to put a steel edge on it, it would be on the center skeg, not on this side though.
Wow.
But no,
I'd like
this
to
does
try
not.
one of those in the sand sometime.
It might work, yeah. I mean, it's you know, you'd have to treat the PTEX, as you know, but thing with these is they're small. So you know, for an adult to ride in deep powder, it's not really that great. But you know, for you know, I can ride that in 4 inches of powder. It's great. But they're really made for kids, and really just to bring it back to that simple. Don't need bindings. Don't need, you know, specialized boots. Even just need a hill of some snow. Let alone lift it. So to make it accessible, affordable, and fun, just to be able to go out and rip around. But it's interesting hearing you talk about the park capabilities, Tim, because I think I've seen some of the Japanese guys doing this too. It looks like they're fencing off little areas at the bases of these resorts where give a kid a shovel and see what he does. It's not quite like that, I don't think, but I mean, that's pretty much how it starts, I think. And be able to build small features with these things, you can have a lot of fun. So, and they don't take up much real estate. Localized impact, great fun. But yeah, it was, that's the story behind those boards. And then I don't ride hard boots much anymore. It's a great feeling, but just too much equipment and gear. And honestly, I'm not at the hill every day. I was when I was running my team, but that's, you're busy coaching when you're doing that mostly. So, but now you have a few times a year.
Nice.
We're so lucky that Suicide Six is an independent ski area because of what's happening around the country. So Tim, I guarantee you there's a lot of people excited about what's coming up. And I'm just going to quickly address one more question that it's asking about age group heats and kind of on what we're doing that day competition wise. I really want to stress that this is, to me, first and foremost, a celebration of what happened there 40 years ago, and we're really going into this with a fun, festive atmosphere. Again, Red Bull is going to have a really great presence. The vendor village down at the base of the mountain. So we want people to come, and there will be pre-registration coming up on the website soon, but we're not going to have multiple categories. It's more about coming to the mountain, seeing what it's all about, running the courses, meeting some OGs, maybe meeting a hero that you have. So I hope that people understand, what it is that we're trying to do. There will be competition, but it's not the core of the day for me. So listen, people, I'm so grateful to all of you on the panel who took time out of your very busy schedules and to join the museum. I want to once again thank Abby, Poppy, Greg, all the people behind the scenes who worked so hard on the Red Bench series, and the sponsors who help make it happen. And again, if you can make a donation to the museum, Abby, told you it makes a big difference, and we want to keep the Red Bench series going. So let me, all of you, take 10, 15 seconds and say goodbye, and then we'll send it back to Abby. Chris?
Well, I was to say thank you, Paul, for putting that event together in the first place, because it really was a catalyst and brought, certainly I speaking for myself, I'm not sure, who knows what I would have done had that not happened. Probably wouldn't have gone the route I did, though, meeting Jake, and getting on Jake's team, meeting Tom Sims, Jack Smith, my skateboarding idols from back then. The catalyst that you created there was amazing, and just thank you for putting that on and this presentation.
Yeah, it was awesome. Jack?
I just wanted, like Chris said, thank you for putting on that original event. It introduced me to a tribe of people that I didn't know, but I knew at the same time. I was this West Coast guy that came out there and was accepted by everybody. And it led to a lifetime friendship with you and some of the other guys. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Thank you. David?
Well, I got to get back up. I got to thank Jack Smith for his contribution to skateboarding. As you know, Chris and I were skateboarders. I love the fact I used to follow the West Coast skateboarding from way back in the days from the 70s, whatever. And then I got one little beef. Tim, I used to work at the Woodstock Inn. When my wife and I visited there 20 years ago, we paid about $200. I checked for the rates for this weekend of the OG Invitational. It's $547 on that Friday night. I cannot afford $547 for the Woodstock Inn where I used to work. That's just Paul. We're gonna have to find a trailer or something for us.
All right.
Hey, Dave, you could do like I did the second night I was there for the original one, and Paul kicked me out of his house because he had other company coming, and I ended up sleeping on a pool table at the Woodstock Recreation Center.
Oh, well, that's quite possible. And I say hello, Abby. Thank you, Abby.
Yes,
I want
thanks,
to
Abby.
thank everybody for doing this, especially Paul and everybody that's watching, contributors, the Vermont Ski Snowboard Museum. I made a little donation. I didn't throw in the money that I probably should have, but anyhow, thank you all. I hope to see you in February. I'm supposed to have a hip replacement. I don't want to do that. Maybe it's my last hurrah, but we'll see what happens. Until that time, one love, everybody. One love. Tune into Reggae Street Saturday
Nope.
nights.
Don't worry, David. We still got that medical sled at the mountain. We'll get you down the hill, buddy.
Oh my! Now you had to do that. Okay.
No, those things are
Thank
bad
you,
luck.
Tim. Thanks to Suicide Six. for
Yeah.
real.
Thanks to Tim and what you're doing there at 6. I'm really, we're gonna have fun.
Yeah, looking forward to that, Tim.
So listen, thank you all. I love you. This is just such a treat for me, and I can't wait to see you. So let's throw it back to Abby. Be safe, everybody.
Thanks all.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you,
All right.
everybody. Thank you, Abby.
All right, thank you, Paul, and thank you to our panel for joining us tonight on the Red Bench. I am definitely looking forward to the February event, and I hope all of you in the audience are inspired to go check it out, maybe even participate. As Paul said, you can visit the OG Invitational website, which is the oginvitational.com for more detailed information on the event. We will be in attendance, the museum, so if you are there, please come say hi. I also really want to thank our audience for joining us tonight, and don't forget to make those donations. I'm seeing some roll in, so thank you. And just to let you know that the museum is currently closed while we get our new exhibit, The Art of the Graphic, installed. We'll reopen on the 26th with a Thursday through Sunday 12 to 5 schedule. We hope you'll come visit us. We do have an online and on-site gift shop that also provides another perfect opportunity to support the museum and get some holiday shopping done. Remember to follow us on social media, continue to open our e-newsletters. This is the best way to stay up to date on all of our happenings. It's actually gearing up to be quite a busy and exciting winter for us. As always, this event was recorded and it will be available on YouTube next week. So if people were unable to make it or you want to share this with friends, you can do so there. That's all I have. Thank you again, all of you, our panelists, Paul, and our audience. Have a wonderful evening.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Abby. Thanks,
Good night, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Wow.
Snurfer Boy, Instagram, everybody, social media. You got to use social media to the best tool available.
Yeah, I got to get better at that. I promise.
Good night,
No,
everybody.
Good night.
Good night.